Welcome to the show. I'm Matty Marshall. The 2025 Major League Paintball season is approaching, and I'm pretty stoked for this show today. We have Los Angeles Infamous represented by Zach Patient and Travis Lemanski. Now, Travis Lemanski and I go way back. We were competitors back in the day, and he's done an amazing job of leading that crew throughout the years, and he has quite the legacy. We're going to discuss that, Zach Patient's mindset approaching 2025, dive into the moves that they have made here to try to bulk up their squad to get a little bit of a better run here in 2025. Infamous, make no mistake, is a legendary squad, but it has been a bit since they've been in that winner's circle, standing at the top of the podium, 10th overall in 2024. But they've had quite a bit of change to what is going to be their starting lineup in this giant shakeup that we've had here in the offseason going 2024 to 2025. It is a bit of a new era. So looking forward to jumping into it. Without any further ado, let's bring in Zach Patient and Travis Lemanski. Infamous is one of my favorite teams to watch. It's a very exciting team. They play an aggressive brand of paintball, and really looking forward to picking the brain of both Zach and Travis to, just to kind of see where their heads are at here as we head into this, off of this crazy offseason. So, maybe we should start there. Trav, we'll start with you, but well, first of all, good morning, afternoon, gentlemen here, wherever you guys are at in the world when you're listening to this. But yeah, so Travis, you've seen it all, brother. We've been through, hell and back, and we've fought against each other back in the day and had a lot of fun off the field, and we were neighbors for a long time. But you've been leading the ship here in this legendary Infamous franchise. So, and we're going to get to your thoughts on your peers and these other teams a little bit. I want to kind of focus on last year's performances and then these pickups that you guys have. But just real quick, wanted to touch base. Wild offseason. I mean, have you seen it this crazy before? Yeah. I do think we are kind of heading into a new era. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's always kind of like crazy, but this year was like, pretty unexpected. I mean, taking, some of these super top guys that you wouldn't think would move, all moving to one team is pretty nuts. But, it is what it is. I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it is. So, Zach, before we kind of dive into, Infamous's last season and these new pickups and, talk shop about all this stuff and get into some of the stuff you've been dealing with too, get your thoughts on that and your headspace here for 2025. But what do you think, bro? I mean, you've seen a bunch too. Zach, you're a vet now, man. Like you may look 24, but you are not. You are a soldier in this game. You have seen a lot. So, what is your thoughts on all these moves that have happened? And well, again, we'll get a little bit more into the weeds on that in a bit, but just your, first impressions that I kind of want to hear here as we're heading into 2025.
Yeah, man, I think the league goes through these kind of, I don't want to call them growing pains, but major shifts every 3 to 4, maybe 5 years. And this year was no surprise to that. Everything happened super early, caught everybody by surprise. The chips were moving all over the place, and everybody, had to pay attention and be on their best as far as moves, hearing things around the league and trying to better their teams to the best of their ability. It's definitely been crazy. Yeah, I think there's been big shakeups like this before, but this is a big one. I'm super excited to see how it plays out.
I mean, there's really only out of the 20 pro teams, and we have some new faces there with, the Sea Dogs coming in and Leverage and some team name changes, but there's kind of only 2 teams of the pro teams from last season that have been relatively untouched, at least so far, hearing maybe a divisional pickup here or there for both PB Fit and also Uprising. Other than that, it's been the Wild Wild West as far as players changing, going to different teams. And I mean, complete, like 2/3 of a roster changing over for a lot of these top teams. It's that crazy, which is going to make 2025 really entertaining. And also, Zach, I didn't say this during the open, but I'm pretty stoked that we get to, we got a couple clips of that altercation you had with Mouse at World Cup, which kind of made, was getting thousands of shares and was kind of blowing up and going viral. And you do come from the old school, and that's one of the things I think a lot of people need to understand about the mindset and how Infamous plays the game. Travis, you came up as, a guy that was used to winning paintball tournaments, Detroit Revolution, Avalanche, going on to Image and then Infamous, and then you were the one that kept the name alive and didn't let it die. And then Zach, you grew up, getting sometimes literally beat up and verbally abused by the old school OG Aftershock dudes, who, as the famous quote goes, people used to go to World Cup to watch Aftershock pound people. So, this is just kind of the legacy that you guys come from, and you guys kind of play the game that way and have that mindset. So we'll get to that clip in a bit. But Travis, let's touch here a little bit on, what are your thoughts before I dive into this on last season? Because, man, we had it, I went out to that first practice you guys had against Impact. Really loved the squad that you guys had for this year. Still did, even, through the year. I mean, 10th overall for you guys. Best finish was a 7th place at that first event. But I thought you guys had that mix of threats and vets, as we always say, that was going to be very competitive in 2024. But before we kind of dive into the performance here, what is your overall thoughts on the year?
So I learned a ton in 2024. Obviously, we made Sunday at all the events except for Dallas. It wasn't always pretty, but we got in there. But obviously that's not why we play the sport, right? We don't just want to make it into Sunday. We want to go get on the podium. We want to win. I mean, that's really why everyone kind of does it. My biggest shock, I guess, from 2023 to 2024 was, the game, it seemed like in 2023 was very slow. It was very methodical. The fields were super locked up, and Infamous, like you had mentioned earlier, has always been a very aggressive, very attack-minded team. So we spent like the entire season of 2023 learning how to play slow and learning how to just be a little inside out type team. So by Cup, we were that team. And then we showed up in 2023 in the first event, it was a little aggressive, but you could play inside. And then, the rest of the layouts since then, it was just Chaosville. So we had to flip switches, and it was a very interesting year, and definitely, I think layouts, field layouts kind of dictated it. And so it was kind of like who was going to adapt as a team to that.
Zach, do you agree, disagree? Just again, before we get into the weeds here, your overall thoughts, now that it's all done, and then what was the mindset heading into last season?
Yeah, I think the field layouts played a part in, teams' adaptability and style that they chose going into the events. And then you also saw, the blind layouts coming around every blue moon. And that definitely shook some things up. Us on Infamous, we love the blind layout thing. That allows, our forte of attacking and doing really creative stuff that, people don't get to practice 95 times over and over again. Really shine. So I would still like to see that blind layout at least once a year, but the way that the field layouts are definitely adapting and changing. I like the off-speed ones of slow and methodical, and then of course one like World Cup to where it was like the center was extremely important, and the snake was total battle down that wire. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in 2025.
I just don't think they're stepping away from it. I feel that I haven't talked to Jason specifically about this. We typically do. We're set to have that conversation. I'm talking about Jason Trozen, our commissioner who makes the layouts. But I think because most people have been pretty, mostly incredibly happy about how the layouts have been. They've been fun to play. They've been fun to watch. Of course, as always, some are going to be a little bit better than others in the sense that, a little bit more aggressive or a little bit, there's different ways to look at this. Well, let me ask you this question. Is that something do you guys like the layouts that we've been seeing? Would you like them a little bit more aggressive, or, what changes would you make to the way the layouts have been going down?
Well, I just think it goes it's very extreme. So if you were to remember back to the World Cup, not last year, the year before, where it was very risky to go past the first bump or bunker on the snake side, right? So a lot of times you'd see two dudes playing heads up, and then whoever could sneak in the snake, obviously that was a pretty big advantage. And then obviously the other guy could get in with him once that guy left. Whereas this year, I guess what I kind of don't like is for guys to have no eyes on the break, meaning it's just red alert sometimes just on the break, and there's maybe one little sliver and you have to be like running through it to see it kind of thing. So in my mind, that's like a little extreme, but I get it. I understand why they're doing it. They're trying to be exciting and do all that stuff. And, we're down for it. It's fine. But I think that when it's like, like everyone pretty much uses red alert and danger as like, these things are all hot and it's moving fast on both sides. Like, so, he could be in snake 4 kind of thing. But when it's red alert and danger on the break, you're just like, oh my God, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? So it's a little less team oriented and a little more just freestyle, like, which is why I think the Russians did so well.
Yeah, and I don't want to stay too regimented on this conversation. You bring the Russians up, so let's talk about that. They obviously had a ton of success this year. They win the overall series title. Talking to Quinn, Nadu Iconic Awards, we're discussing nominees. It's just going to be impossible to not have all of the starting 5 for Russia or for Red Legion in a decent amount of those awards because of the success that they had and the fact that they have not a lot of depth on that team. Once you go to that second line, you're going to a bunch of up-and-coming players, whereas their starting 5 are probably all going to be Hall of Famers. I think Karzlev's probably still a couple seasons out from getting that moniker when he retires, but he's on his way, especially with the elite level that he's been playing. But what do you think their magic was? I mean, they ran 5 dudes kind of going against the logic that a lot of teams go with. Some teams, Aftermath was running 2 lines. Damage won 2 lines a couple years ago to win. Most teams are carrying at least 8, sometimes 10 of guys that are very comparable, that are peers. And then you filter it in on Sunday to figure out who's playing best with some multiple options. Makes it a little hard on the coach. At least if you're coaching Red Legion, it's like, all right, starting 5 is going to be Karzlev, D-side. Sergey, you're behind him. Kirill, you're going to be going up the middle, and then J-Rab and Malloy on the snake side. No, I know we've been running the same exact line for the past 35 points, but we're crushing people and winning tournaments, and our plus minus is absolutely insane. It's historic. So yeah, that's the line. Get your asses out there. But I mean, what are your thoughts on Red Legion's dominance this year? Trav, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I do think, while I think they're an awesome team on any layout, I do think these like chaos layouts really play to their strength because they are relentless attack, right? Karzlev is going to take D4 if he does not see a paintball shot his way or he doesn't see one little gun barrel or whatever. Malloy, could be arguably one of the top snake guys in the game, and leave him in a snake where it's one of those ones where you can go in undetected. It's just, that's like his game, right? He's going to be down the wire. He's going to control it and take bites when he can. And, if he does happen to get shot, oh, hey, here comes J-Rab, following him up. So I do think that adding J-Rab gave a good team just extra depth, which is why, some of their offseason moves this year, I feel like you're going to give Malloy like a breather. That makes them extra dangerous. So, because I do feel like that's when if they do, fall apart, it's when they get a little tired and burn out. So maybe second game on Sunday type thing.
Yeah, they only really ran into a big issue there in Chicago when X Factor beat them. But other than that, it was pretty amazing what they were able to do with essentially just 5 guys. When you look at, I don't have the points played because I've got all your guys' notes in front of me, but when I was having this conversation with Quinn and we were kind of talking about, how we really have no choice as people in charge of putting the nominees out there and trying to figure out who that's going to be and doing our due diligence. We obviously talked to a lot of people about that, but man, when you look at the overall points played for the starting 5 for Red Legion, it's insane. They have substantially more points played than even the closest guy on another squad. I think Ryan Greenspan was way up there too for Dynasty, but they also played a ton of games, going deep for the majority of the year. They went third, first, third, fifth. That's insane with 5 dudes. So it's, but this is kind of bringing it back to Infamous here. This is why I thought you guys were going to be so good last season, was that when I looked at how the trend of the layouts, and I'm like, oh, these are wild ass layouts where aggression pays off. Like you guys said, to your point, look what just happened with Red Legion and how successful they were rolling dice. And your roster is definitely a roster, and it's changed a lot, which we'll get to that in a bit. But it's not, you changed the roster, but it didn't get any less aggressive. You got some dudes that are just super down for it, and we'll get to that a bit. But that was when we did some shows at the beginning of the season, and I was like, hey man, you got to make some predictions out here. And I predict that Infamous is probably going to be doing really well this year. And then sure enough, if we go to that first event, you guys take a 7th and you go 3-1 in the prelims, and then barely lose to the Hurricanes, who went all the way into the finals in that first event and went up 3 points on Dynasty. Everyone was like, oh my God, then maybe this is the moment that the Hurricanes finally get it done. So they were incredibly tough there, and you barely lost to them. And you had some wars. You beat Notorious, beat the Ironman, lost to the Hurricanes by 1 in the prelims, and then beat Damage by 2, and then you lose to the Hurricanes by 1 at that first event. So after that first event, I'm thinking, okay, well, I think this prediction could possibly come true. But then you guys go into Texas, and it was a bit of a disaster in Texas for you guys with that last place finish. So what was your, what do you think changed? Zach, what do you think, bud? So it's that first event, and then you go into Texas, and it's a bit of a disaster with the 20th. So 7th to 20th. You guys pick it back up after that. We'll get to that in a second. But what do you talk to me a bit about Vegas and the mindset there, and then what happened in Texas?
With Vegas, we had a really great practice up in NorCal against Impact and Dynasty. We left that practice feeling really confident. Like you said, going 3-1 in the prelims, we felt pretty confident there. Nothing to take anything away from the Hurricanes, but that final point against them, we were, I think, 1.5 seconds away from getting that buzzer right at the end. You know what I mean? And then even in the overtime point, I think we were damn near exactly the same to almost getting that point. And then you go to one-on-ones, and the whole one-on-ones thing was crazy. But I think, speaking on Vegas and, further looking throughout the year with our performance, we feel like in every tournament, we beat ourselves. And, we can elaborate on that with every single tournament throughout the year. But specifically Vegas, that's kind of how we felt there. Super disappointed, and obviously expected a lot more. But again, Hurricanes were playing great paintball, and, they ended up going to the finals. And then Texas was, again, we feel like we came out of our practice feeling pretty confident. We had, Travis, was it X Factor, and who else was there? Impact?
And Heat. I think it was like Impact. No, I don't know if it was Impact. Was it? I don't know. It was Heat, X Factor, us, someone else. It was like 4 really strong teams, and basically all teams that were at that practice barely or didn't make Sunday. Like, it was like we all had it wrong. So that was the first event where I feel like Jason did the full switch to like chaos layout, and that's just how it was played. So, we had to totally like revamp everything after that, because obviously it was a complete disaster for us. We just, at that point, when you do something like that and just go out there and bomb, you're like, all right, we know we're not terrible. We just, every once in a while, it's going to happen. So it's kind of like, how do you pick yourself back up? How do you regroup? Sometimes the best thing to do is just dump that memory and go into the next thing. So there's a million things that happen to cause us to do, that type of performance. But it was, it was unacceptable for all of us. We were disgusted. So.
But that being said, man, it's like you have to speak to the parity in the league too, because, when I'm bringing up these factual things that happen in this story, the story is the story. This is what happened. Yeah, you guys did take that 20th, but if you look at when you look at how topsy-turvy and crazy this past year was, there was only a few teams that were able to to avoid missing a Sunday. Obviously, Legion was incredibly successful and consistent. X Factor ended up being second place, not winning a tournament. This is overall, but they had 2 finals appearances, 2 second places. And then Impact took 3rd, second at World Cup, but also in Texas, they took 15th. And then you go to Houston Heat. Houston Heat was also able to get into the top 3 and not miss a Sunday. But then Dynasty took 14th as well at that second event. PB Fit didn't make Sunday, even though they won World Cup, until the 4th event. Tampa Bay Damage took 13th at the first event. Chicago Aftershock, 15th at the first event, 11th at World Cup. AC Diesel, 20th, 9th, 13th, 19th, 3rd. And then now you guys at 10th. And I could continue to go down this list, but you guys see the trend there. The trend is it was incredibly hard to be a consistent pro paintball team this past season. So I want to get your thoughts on that. And then kind of you could also discuss it while you're giving me your answers. Do you think it's going to be the same with all this change as we head into 2025? Zach, what do you think?
Such a tough one, not knowing the layouts. I think Travis made a good point on, them being from one extreme to another. But then again, I mean, I see where Jason's head's at. Like, if you want to be declared as the best team, you have to be able to adapt. And going into 2025, I mean, I think everybody got a taste of it, like you said, going down that list and all the volatile placings of, teams that I'm sure in the beginning of the year you said we're going to do pretty well. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see with these layouts. I don't know what the exact answer is, but this next year is going to be pretty interesting with all the different roster changes and everything that's happened in this offseason.
Well, speaking of roster changes, I kind of want to talk about what the infamous mentality is, and then we'll get into the roster changes. And then Darren, our producer, if you're listening, but I do want to pull up that clip pretty soon because I just kind of really want to see it again. But I think that this is a good time to talk about the infamous mentality. Infamous is a hardcore paintball team. I loved playing, it's like one of my favorite lessons after being done with this game that I did not understand when I was playing it was that you really need to thank your enemies when you're not playing for blood. Like, obviously we're playing for a little bit of pain out there and obviously a lot of respect, and there's a lot of things that we are playing for, but we're playing war without death. And if it wasn't for the dynasties and the infamouses and the avalanches, I could not have had as awesome of a paintball adventure as I did, and so the reason why I loved playing against you guys is that because you guys were relentless, you guys were fun, but insane competitors on the field, super fun, awesome friends off the field. It was, a pleasure to have you guys as rivals for that long. So maybe Travis, talk to me about like, what is the infamous mentality? Because you guys, one of the reasons you're fun to watch, and this is going to lead into these pickups that you had, because obviously you guys, based on these results, you guys want to win tournaments again. I think it's been since 2018, 16 was the last time you guys were sitting first place, but you guys used to be good for a win, sometimes 2 a year for a good decade. And you have the talent for it. So I feel that these new moves are probably going to give you guys more consistency, but still keep the punch and the aggression. So Travis, talk to me about the legacy of the team and what the infamous mindset is that you guys bring to the game.
Yeah. So legacy of the team, obviously we always want to be the ones that are hitting you in the mouth and sort of dictating the pace of the match. As I stepped out from a player and into a coach's role, I've kind of kept that same mentality. I always try to give our guys like that one-man advantage on breakouts, and put us in a position. Some positions are, or some plays are inside out and this type of thing, but we're always working towards that style of a mentality, and we never want to be just sitting around. I'd rather be going down the field, going for it, and play literally as many possible points as we can until because we just feel like we have that edge being aggressive to win points. So that's sort of that mentality. I would say throughout the years, when Infamous was a top team, when you're winning, it's easy to stay together. It's easy to keep that core together. But then as you have these other teams that have maybe deep budgets, or they're factory teams, or they have billionaire owners type thing, they can sort of cherry pick your talent. So just staying in the fight is a challenge in itself. I would say that's been the biggest challenge over the past 7-8 years is just being able to put together a competitive team. And half of it, dude, is just having guys stay together for more than a season without getting your top 1-2 guys plucked every year. So I feel like if you can do that, keep your little nucleus together, and then bring in talent that you know that you need to like get to that next level, I feel like that's the key, right? So we all know, having some young, hungry kids and then the veterans, that's the real success. But then, just staying together for more than one season is huge.
But Travis, just got to kind of throw this in, I think, at this point in the conversation. Then Zach, I want to talk about intensity with you because Travis, the right type of humans that you pick up with that type of mentality, because there's, obviously a lot of divisional players that watch these interviews, and, I'm headed up to a tryout this weekend to help a divisional team. And, we're starting the season across the board for all divisions, but, what type of person you're picking up is incredibly crucial. But I do have to give you a ton of respect because, you started at an early age in your 20s, starting to work for different paintball companies and developed a certain skill set and a mindset as a business, mind. And then you decided to kind of do this on your own, which I think was huge for the sport. It's huge for Infamous because, we have to, new companies need to come around, new products need to come out. And what you guys have done with Pro DNA and what you have created to kind of have to do it yourself, where you're like, okay, well, yeah, dude, I'm not a billionaire or not a quadrillionaire. I don't have an absolute amount of disposable income to just start paying dudes a bunch of money to play paintball, so you were like, okay, well, and I know how to make paintball products. So like, I'm going to start my own paintball company. And so it's awesome that you've been able to do that to keep the talent around. And then, so it's kind of a win-win for everybody. It's obviously a win for you. It's your business. It's a win for the consumers because you guys are making some cool products. And this isn't an ad, dude. Like you guys aren't paying me to say this. I just think it's amazing. And it's an important part of the game. It's sustainability. It's growth. It's diversification of the look of paintball. It's another 10-up that's awesome where people can go and buy cool stuff that keeps a legendary team around like Infamous to at least to get the dudes to get enough where they're not going to, just get cherry picked every season. So like you said, you can have a bit of a consistent roster. So then Zach, before we talk about mindset with you, Travis, what is the mentality behind, obviously have a successful business is the mentality, like this is your bread and butter, make cool paintball stuff. But you could have chosen an easier road. You didn't have to keep Infamous going and spend all that money doing that. Could have just been like, yeah, dude, I'm just going to sit at my house with my 4 awesome daughters and my wife and just make paintball stuff and begrudgingly go to tournaments because you have to. That's not the case, it seems like to me.
Yeah, honestly, it goes back to a conversation that you and I had like at World Cup many, many moons ago. And it was getting ready for the year when I was going to retire. And you were like, dude, you can't let the team die. And I was like, okay, we had that old conversation, but you know how it is, whatever. I wasn't thinking, I was just in the moment. And then I got home that after that event and I was like, man, that was World Cup. And now we're heading into the next year. And I was like, yeah, I'll try to get some sponsors for the team for the next season. But at some point it sort of clicked in me that, paintball has been such a huge part of my life. It's been, since I was a kid, turning pro at 17 and then playing for decades right in it. I just felt like I needed to give back to the sport in some way. And so the whole Infamous thing started as I know how to make these products. I've done them for all the companies in the whole, sport. And so I can just make them for us and help support the guys and support the brand. And now we have a pro team that is funded by ourselves. So that's sort of how it came about. That's the whole Pro DNA thing. That's it. But it was literally based on like, man, I can't let this team die. And I don't know how to do it because I'm a thousandaire, not a millionaire. So it was kind of like, we gotta do something here. So.
Well, dude, it's been a really cool road to watch because, just to kind of see all these, different pop-up companies like what Alex and Oliver did with Hormesis, what you guys are doing Pro DNA and what PB Fit's doing with Hydro. It's a really cool thing. It helps our sustainability. It helps keeping this going. It's so crucially, we can't overstate the importance. But then that being said, so, okay, you're surviving, you're getting along, but then you have to figure out who the guys are you're going to surround yourself. So Zach, obviously you've been doing this for a long time in this camp and definitely came up the hard way with the OG Aftershock guys. And I played against the OG Aftershock dudes back in the 90s. And then after that, and it was like a bunch of burly, bearded and mustached lumberjacks threatening to kill me when I was 16 years old. So these are true stories. And, but again, like I said, you got to thank your enemies, because if it wasn't for me being like, damn, that 35-year-old or 40, I don't know, he looks 50, but I'm only 18. So maybe he's only 28. I don't know. But that dude just threatened to beat me up because I had a good game. So, yeah, this is a little weird, but like, let's get after it, old man, And so anyway, it was just, but that's where you came up at. And then so just talk to me about that. And then I want to pull up this clip because I feel like this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about, and honestly, if we're going to have our hashtag grow paintball conversation, there has to be some sort of emotion and visceral carnal reality that happens when people watch this. no one's getting carted to the hospital, knock on wood, because we're jumping, we're doing, triple backflips on motorcycles. No one's dying and drowning because you're surfing 100-foot waves, or you're not getting crushed by a 300-pound linebacker. So what is the spectacle that we can have? Well, that's a longer conversation, and I want to focus on Infamous. But I think a little slice of that is the way you guys play the game, man. It's like that entertaining game and the wild ass stuff that we saw at Diesel during their run at Cup. And it kind of started with this moment that we're going to see in a bit here. But before we pull that up, Zach, give me your mindset, because you are, as we're about to see, about as hardcore as it gets when it comes to that mindset as that first attacker in the snake. And enlighten me on how you look at the game.
Yeah, man. I definitely grew up in the whole Chicago Badlands. Oh, here we go.
Oh wait. Well, let's watch it real quick, and then we can talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just watch this go down real quick, and then we can kind of run it a couple times. So you're attacking. You have this.
That's a penalty.
Altercation.
That's a penalty. That's a major.
And you catch about, dude. I tried to count it one time. I feel like it was like 50. So it's Clint Johnson in the back corner. You're attacking in this game. You guys ended up losing, but it started right there because if anyone hasn't seen it, go watch the PB Fit AC Diesel match where AC Diesel fell apart. So yeah, Darren, maybe we can run this through again, and Zach, you can kind of talk me through what was going on here in this situation.
Definitely needed to win quick. You'll see in the background, I believe that's Rodarte trying to get through the middle and try to find his seam to where he could break the game open. I needed to go to the snake off the break, get a kill, maybe somebody trying to pick Rodarte off. I'm pretty sure, I don't remember exactly what guy it was, but I got a kill on the inside here, was wrapping into the back center, and then, looking over for myself, shooting the snake corner. And I knew Mouse was ahead of me right there. And in the scenario, Mouse would go to the snake too and look inside for, again, somebody like Rodarte flying through the middle. So I knew I had just a small window to go get him as well. If I could take two guys with me and let my back guys go and hang the flag, that was kind of the objective there. But once you get into the other team's side of the snake, it's straight war. I felt like I got the jump on Mouse. Somebody from the middle told him that I was coming, so I think he switched from inside back outside, and he just did his stand-up thing, and we were kind of putting our barrels in each other's faces. But I mean, there's no bad blood between Mouse and I, but I mean, I really wanted that kill. I thought I was going to have it clean. And when you have that adrenaline in the moment, you know what I mean? You're about to do anything to pull that off. And we really needed that point in the match. If we would have been able to have that flag hang and then just had a little bit more time on the clock, maybe we could have scored another one to advance. But I mean, where we were at in the tournament, we came out slow and then started to build steam as the tournament was going on. We had a really good Saturday, and then felt really confident going into this game, and I was just laying it all out on the line, regardless of whatever the circumstances was there.
Well, let me ask you this question. What did you say to Mouse in that little altercation? Because that's what I've been wondering this whole time, and we have talked quite a bit in the offseason, but we didn't talk about that. So what did you say to Mouse when you guys went goggle to goggle and Clint was pumping up your back with about 50, which, by the way, you ate those shots like an anvil eats a hammer. It was impressive, like the juggernaut, like however you want to talk about it. And there's been, that clip was posted and set to some sweet music, and it was and you go read the comments, and it was just like, damn, ZP is an absolute zombie out there. That was incredibly impressive because, Travis, I've been shot to pieces. I used to play at the middle before. Like, I've been cut in half with chainsaws out there, but I don't know if I could stand there like a stone, like the Rock of Gibraltar, and eat 60 in my back, dude. So what did you say to Mouse? Like, what was the verbal altercation in that moment?
I don't remember the exact words, but if you listen to that raw clip, something was said. It was kind of just like, all right, yeah, really, MFer, like, let's go. Like, you want to do it? Mouse and I have this little thing to where we always go back and forth with each other. We're, like I said before, we're homies, but We had our barrels in each other's faces, kept shooting each other. And then we both put our guns down, but then we never stopped locking eyes. And then he walked towards me, I walked towards him. Like, I'm not going to back down to Mouse. You know what I mean? I feel, on any given day, I'm right there with him. So, yeah, I mean, I have no back down in me at all. So if it was going to go down, I was there and I was ready.
Yeah. A lot of people say that, but sometimes, we haven't really seen a clip of it. Everyone can sit there and be like, oh, there's no quitting me, dude. I'm down to go with anybody. And like, I don't care how many times you shoot me. I'm not going to get intimidated. But I could always pull this clip up for you and be like, hey, a lot of people say that, but look what ZP did. Because did you know? I mean, obviously you're feeling it, but how much were you feeling those shots on your back from Clint? And then there was some coming from the inside too. But I mean, was your back on fire at that point? Were you totally just like focused on saying your piece to Mouse? What was, how much recognition of the pain, or were you feeling pain? Do you have the ability to block that out? I'm just wondering, man, because I've seen dudes get shot twice and crumple over like my 4-year-old would crumple over if I shot him with a paintball right now.
Man, I mean, I didn't feel a thing. It was more of like, all right, Mouse is here. I almost had him. We had our little like standoff thing. And, when we got in each other's faces, you have so much adrenaline in your body running at that time to where it's just like everything else around you blacks out. You know what I mean? And like I said, before the point started, I had an objective. I was going for it. I really wanted to do anything that I could for my team to, make it to the finals at World Cup on Sunday. But yeah, I mean, as far as feeling anything, there was nothing there. I was playing with a back injury. So if I subliminally had any thoughts of, pain or protecting anything, it was more of my back. So, yeah, it was kind of like little mosquito bites, but when winning's on the line like that, you don't feel a thing,
And then Trav, as you're watching that did you see all that go down from the pits? What were you kind of thinking in that situation? Because, again, you kind of grew up in the era where that was kind of how it was. Not nearly that bad, but it was kind of like that quite a bit. So you're no stranger to these situations too. What was going through your head when that was going down?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm all about it. If we're gonna play paintball, we're gonna play paintball. If we're gonna bonus ball, we're gonna bonus ball. I mean, I just sort of wish, like, obviously the next match, that overshooting thing is a penalty. So it's kind of like, just call it the same, really. That's what kind of goes through my head after watching that clip. But at that moment, I was just, we're all ready for war. I'm sending these guys out there with like insane run routes to just go down to their end and try to get a point in the least amount of time. So we are only thinking, let's go eat. You know what I mean? I'm not like writing down whose name was that. We're going to get him back. But of course, had we gone into some other thing, would have been like, green light Clint, and he'd have loved it. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, for sure. And then, because you guys go shake hands afterwards, Zach, what did you have to say to Clint? Because Clint was the dude dishing out that punishment. But I mean, when you and I talked about this off air, and we both agreed, but I was like, well, Zach, I mean, if I was in Clint's situation and you were getting up on my dude's face, like, I'd be trying to saw you in half too. And you were like, oh yeah, 100%. But then, so what did you say to Clint after the game?
Nothing, man. It was handshakes and hugs. It was handshakes and hugs. They beat us. Again, I feel like we didn't play to our ability. And going back to, what you and I talked about, if I was playing behind Jonah and somebody did that to Jonah, like, there's no telling what I would do. Rodarte was, if you get the reverse angle of that, it's out there on the internet, but Rodarte was about to run out of the pit. He was literally on the verge of doing it. And so it's all good. I mean, like we said before, I grew up in that era of, all right, come get it. If you're coming to my side, like, make that person never want to do that again type psychology behind the way that, intense paintball should be. And, that's how winners play. So, I mean, there's no bad blood there whatsoever. And like I said, I mean, if somebody did that to Jonah, like, there's no telling what I feel like I would do to them.
Yeah. And then, so, kind of talking to head into the roster conversation. I mean, Zach, I really feel that you were playing with a sense of immediacy this season. And, Jonah's very talented and he had some big moments too, but you were more consistent, in my estimation, as that first attacker in the snake. And, you've been doing this for a long time. You've always been a talent, but there seemed to be something there. And, I got to ask you, based on your real life situation and what you got going on, you might have to take a bit of a break away from paintball for a while. Was that, what's going on with that? And then in your head, was it just like, this may be my last time to play this for a little bit? Like, because you were just big chip on your shoulder, going out there trying to get that win every single time you were playing, man. I mean, and then even to the point where, again, you're taking, 40, 50 extra shots and not even flinching. It just totally locked in on that moment. How much has that been kind of hanging over your soul here, heading into 2025?
Yeah, the whole last season, I had that feeling throughout the year. So it was kind of like that, this may be my last chance to go out there. So there was definitely a different gear that I felt like I found within myself, and, the passion that I have for this game. And then also for the infamous organization, man. World Cup, it was definitely turned up a lot. I was really, really bummed that I had to sit out my home event in Chicago. I've won with Infamous in Chicago before, and that's such a huge event for me. And, us not going as far as what we expected there, it really, really stung. So I pushed it as hard as I could to be able to play World Cup. And I took every opportunity that I could, not overdoing it to where, I was playing stupid, like, oh, why is this guy running down the field and getting penalties and stuff like that. Like, I really sat with my thoughts and, sat with the game plan a lot, more than I have in the past. And, I feel like it paid off for me. And, regardless of what happens with, my situation, I'm definitely going to take that moving forward, and continue to apply it to my game.
No, for sure. Because then, heading into the season, that's kind of the question is looking at, fans looking at Infamous's roster. It's like, well, who's going to be that first attacker for sure in the snake? You pick up Zach Geiger, wondering how long you're going to be there, Zach. And then obviously you got Jonah. So options here, but are we going to see at that first event? Is that going to happen? What do you think? And then, that's so we can head into kind of having the conversation about the roster, because I feel like the pickup of Geiger is big for you guys, because Geiger is a little bit of a bigger version of you, Zach. I mean, he's athletic. You're a thick guy, but he's, a little thicker. And but you both play kind of a similar brand of paintball. Jonah's a little bit more methodical, though, so I'd kind of, for Jonah, I'd like to see him be able to transition a little bit. I think it's a big year for Jonah heading up, because if you can kind of merge his style and play aggressive when he needs to, and then have that refined ability to read the moment, because he had some big moments in those situations, particularly in Atlantic City. He ended up winning the move Sunday for that got you guys on to that next round. What are your thoughts?
Well, as far as my situation going into 2025, can't really get into the hard details of, my situation, just because it's an ongoing case. I'm taking it day by day, man. There are opportunities to come out of this in a very favorable way, but then, there are situations to where, I need to prepare for the worst. And that's just on a weekly basis on, feeling it out and seeing where this is going to go. Obviously we picked up Geiger. We're super pumped on him, with Geiger kind of having that more aggressive style in the snake, similar to me, and then plugging Jonah in, having that little off speed pitch style in the snake. I think that's definitely going to benefit the team. I think Jonah and I have complemented each other super well for Travis and his game plans on, how he breaks down the layouts and, what plays he's calling there. But yeah, I mean, as far as my situation, man, it's been super rough, and yeah, I'm definitely gonna continue to, try to make things right, and also fulfill, my role with Infamous as an employee, and then, also being that guy on the team. There's nothing more than I want than, Infamous being back on top where we feel like we deserve to be,
Oh, for sure. And, again, some of my best wishes to you here is you can get through this and come back to us as soon as possible. But, so Trav here with this new squad, you pick up Trevor Reeser, you pick up Rob Velez, release Joe Barrett, he goes to Dynasty. But I really like these pickups because Trevor Reeser is a beast, man. I mean, he's proven. I think he's going to be huge for you guys. Rob Velez didn't get a ton of playing time with Impact, but he did have some huge moments for them. So I'm really happy that, he's probably going to get more playing time. You got Brusselback, Sam Silberg. I mean, so as we kind of get into this roster conversation, Travis, I just think that I think with this lineup, I think with the pickup of a Reeser, of Velez is pretty consistent. Reeser is very consistent. You still have a punch in the snake. So if you can get Sam to, didn't he have COVID and couldn't make practice before World Cup? Yeah. So it was kind of, not the best look for him, but I really am a big believer in Sam Silberg's talent. I think he's going to be huge for you guys. Brusselback's a soldier. So you kind of then you got Callie. Hope he feels better. He's supposed to be on the show today, but I had to call him sick. But anyway, the team is pretty stacked. So Trav, talk to me a little bit about this roster heading into 2025 as we get into some of these positions.
Yeah, I feel really good about the roster. I mean, the moves, you've sort of dissected it a little bit, right? Like, I do feel with these chaos layouts, we'll call them, your twos have to be up in the mix fairly soon. So if you look at, a lot of our twos are now like getting more hyperactive. So, you saw Ryan Hall really getting in the mix last year, and you saw Callie getting in the mix last year, but where maybe the year before they were a little more standing up before they got going. Well, Trevor and Rob are two dudes that, obviously are extremely good players, but they are not going to be afraid to get down the field. They're not going to be afraid to you just might see those guys going, somewhere on the break too. Like I'm not afraid to use these guys and mix it up a lot. Obviously Geiger, he's a bowling ball, dude. Like this guy is going to be, he has like one speed and it's like in your snake kind of guy. So I can't wait for that layout.
Yeah. So as far as, I agree. It's like every game, you have to have different looks on offense. You have to have elite threats on the D side, snake side, and in the middle if the middle is strong. But more often than not, the game is won on Sunday by what happens in the scramble. It's not just, the D side, that guy goes off and he's going to shoot everyone and you're going to have this big blowout victory in the finals. That rarely happens. It typically comes down, sometimes even down to a one-on-one. You guys fought that insane situation to, the Hurricanes, even though it wasn't in the finals, but they went to the finals, and that went all the way to a one-on-one situation. So having these very intelligent options that are very experienced, they can play different styles of paintball to complement you when things are going well, but to save your ass when things aren't going well in the scramble. And you have a lot of those guys. And so that's kind of where I'm looking at 2025. But maybe take me from D side to snake side. Travis, are you going to try to alternate guys a little bit so you're less predictable, or is it going to be, because you did that a little bit, Brusselback, different sides, but Sam kind of ended up being the D side guy, and then Jonah, and then Zach. But then Zach, you came up as a D side player, so I'm just kind of wondering, Travis, then Zach, I want your thoughts on this too. How much versatility are we going to see out of the attackers for Infamous this season?
Yeah, I typically will. Okay, if you want to start from D side on, obviously I really do like that Sam and Tim combination. I feel like those two dudes have completely different styles, but are both highly effective at getting down the field fast. So that's you're going to see a different look, right? If you are a Russian Legion type team and it's the same guy, he's getting different looks. Like he can't just be like, okay, this guy always does this or whatever, set up for this kind of play. But I do agree with, it's not just going to be Sam pulling some sweet move every time that's going to take you to the finals, right? You've got to have these clutch closer guys. I've always sort of respected Rob as like a really nasty gunfighter. Those sort of like mid-game kills, he's crucial at that. Ryan Hall's another guy that gets those, like it'll just be in the middle of a point and all of a sudden they're freaking out because they shot somebody. And then maybe it's because they're a good gunfighter. Maybe it's because they take a little more edgy risk or whatever it is, but that's his style. Trevor, when Trevor and I talked and he was like, obviously like his team got a little crowded, right? Like they brought in Marcelo and Tyler and, you know, all these dudes. So when him and I talked, we talked more as like, you know, I mean, I don't know if he could have stayed on the team or not stayed on that team, but at the same time, he was like, I really want to come to you and let's go win again, you know, because this is a guy that we have won with, and Trevor's not afraid to, you know, I mean, if you remember, like we had a play back when there was the wall, and I would send Trevor to the other side of the wall on the break. Like Trevor's not afraid to go do jobs. He's very like job oriented, and this team is job oriented, right? So, so moving back across, I mean, obviously, like now we've gone through those three. Obviously, you've seen Callie and Ryan on the squad for years. I'm super happy with both of those guys and where they are. I mean, it sucks that, you know, Ryan was pretty amazing for me last season until he got hurt right before Cup, you know, in practice.
Well, you're talking about, well, you got two Ryans. You got two Ryans. You got Rodarte, and then you got Ryan Hall.
One is Dart. We don't even call him Ryan.
Yeah.
Dart is Dart, and Ryan is Ryan Hall. So Ryan Hall played this. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say. So Ryan Hall has been in a role ever since he was like rookie of the year with, you know, AC and that whole program. He's always been a little, you know, he could either play short or play, you know, aggressive. Now you don't think of Ryan as having these like insane wheels, but I like to call him my like little off-speed pitch. So I can kind of put him wherever, and he's a super good utility player. So he can go up the middle, you know, he could be a 1, you know what I mean? So that's sort of Ryan Hall. Callie might be one of the best communicators in the game. If you really like look back at some of our film, and you could just, that voice is so like loud and distinctive. And he does have a really, like through his experience over the years, he really does have like a good knack for the game and understanding things before they happen. So that's like invaluable. And then obviously like working back over to the snake side, I feel like, you know, my snake side now can run with anybody, with Geiger, with Patient, with Jonah. I mean, I got like 3 monsters, so I'm ready for injuries, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, you're deep, right? And then so Zach, but this is kind of with the versatility. Well, injuries, yeah, I mean, you guys have definitely had your fair share of injuries, but I mean, look at what happened at Cup. There's a ton of guys at the end of the season getting, you know, dinged up here or there. But Zach, you know, when you look at how Red Legion has done well, they're not versatile on who plays where. They're versatile on what those guys do going to those positions. So if you go back and rewatch, which I'm sure you guys have done, but if you go back and rewatch a lot of the Red Legion paintball this season, yeah, sure, it's Karslev on the D side for the most part. Occasionally they'll put him at a stand-up, but it's more of the play call. So what position he goes to and how he runs there. So they're changing the position. They're changing the way he's running to that position, and that's across the board. Same with Kirill up in the middle, where Sergey's going to go to complement those two, and then with J-Rab and Malloy on the snake side. So that's essentially their line and their position. It's just the versatility in how they execute to get to those crucial spots. Zach, how important do you know, knowing that it's, again, mostly the same dudes playing the same position, so very little versatility as far as the personnel you're seeing when you are a snake player or a D-side player and who's shooting at you, you know, when you get to those spots. But talk to me about that part of the game right now, because, you know, for the past couple of seasons, you should be able to, as a 1, you should be able to play the snake side, you should be able to play the D side. It's, you want to have different looks and be unscoutable. Talk to me about that.
Specifically with Infamous, or just in general?
Just in general, because, you know, that's kind of the pitch for the past years has been be as versatile as possible. But then we have Legion this year who are basically playing the same dudes in the same positions, winning 2 events in the series title, 2 third places and a 5th. Not having a lot of versatility in the positions, but having versatility on the routes they run and the place that they're going. Versus, okay, Zach, I put you as the 1 on the D side, 1 on the snake side.
Yeah, definitely. Teams like Russians, I'll highlight 2 guys, J-Rab and Meter from X Factor. They did a great job throughout the entire year being that second guy, say for example, on the snake side, of going and cleaning up, you know, after the bomb goes off, whether it's with Billy or with Malloy, you know, down the snake. Like Malloy gets his 1 kill and then goes and trades with the guy in front of him. Now, Meter would always do a great job of, getting into the snake. And he's not necessarily like the back player who looks all goofy when he gets in there and, gets lucky every once in a while. It's very calculated. Same thing with J-Rab and what he did. Majority of the time, J-Rab was starting in the back center every single game. And if Malloy was alive, Malloy was in their snake. Or if Malloy died, J-Rab was Malloy 2.0. Like he also wasn't, the goofy guy in there learning or trying to find his place in the snake and learn throughout the event how to do it. You know what I mean? Like those guys have been around forever and, spend the time studying how the layout unfolds, and when those windows open, they go and execute their jobs. And, with all this layout talk that we're talking about and, with the versatility of guys and how important that is in today's game now, I think that, if guys don't have that implemented into their game, it needs to happen at this point.
And then Travis, when you look across the league and look at the different ways that these being done, I mean, maybe, kind of look at, say, Impact and Heat and X Factor. So those are other than Legion, we've been discussing them. But what do you think we're going to see out of X Factor, Impact, and Heat as we can kind of transition the conversation to talking about, before I let you guys go, talking about some of these top teams and what you think you're going to see out of these teams? Maybe start with Impact, since that was the kind of the craziest story in the offseason was the fact that, Bart, Dave, and the boys over at Impact decided to load up on some legendary all-stars to complement what was already a pretty damn good team that took second place at World Cup.
Right. And arguably you cherry picked like the top guys in their respective, spot into that team. So, it'll be super interesting. On paper, they should be just this monster, unstoppable team. But again, it's going to depend on how they come together as a team, because if these like super individual talents come together and they're me or infighting or upset about reps or, you know what I mean? So Dave and Barrett, they're going to have their hands full kind of managing that. Those are big personalities in that group. They're all amazing players, but it's like it could get a little rowdy in there. So that's sort of what I think about that team.
Yeah. And then Zach, what do you think about Houston Heat? You're a Midwest guy. You picked up some Midwest players. Ronnie Dizon. What do you think about the changes that have happened with Houston Heat? Because they are losing some, superstars and picking up some, up and coming dudes that have been grinding hard and coming off a blast camp and deciding to go that route to rebuild their squad after losing, Connor Kelly, Tyler Harmon, and Konstantin Fedorov.
Yeah, that organization is going through a little bit of a rebuild, and you see, organizations like Impact, like what we were talking about, for example, they can arguably say that they have some of the best guys in the league, but then that doesn't necessarily always yield wins. Like we've seen that before, like the crazy big budget rosters really trying to find their footing, and it takes like at least a year sometimes. I think Heat did a good job of trying to centralize their objective of being able to practice with each other more by, having those guys in Chicago always grinding. You see Ronnie at blast camp all the time, and then, the blast camp players not being too far from there, they can really focus on, their communication and, moving off of each other and just like the on-field chemistry. We saw it with Paintball Fit. Those guys play 5 days a week. And nobody really predicted them winning a World Cup, but, they're relentless in their practice. They're relentless in their teamwork, and they surprised a lot of people.
Well, I definitely did. If you got there listening to this and you haven't caught the show I did with PB Fit, go check it out. Brought on pretty much the bulk of the team, talked through their entire Sunday adventure. What a run it was, beating Damage, Red Legion, Diesel, and Impact all in one day to win the World Cup, which is one of the best paintball stories I've ever seen. And then, so Travis headed to X Factor, second overall for X Factor through the 5 events last year, 2 finals appearances. The change that they've had is they lose Axel to go to the Tauntauns, but they pick up Archie Montemayor. Archie can play the first attacker in the Snake. They don't play the same style. Archie's a little bit more of a proactive artist out there. Not kind of the take the spot and be that kind of bully. He can be a bully too, but Axel plays a little bit more in your face, and Archie's a little bit more kind of crafting his destruction over there a little bit. Do you think, but that is a change, I mean, obviously they have Billy Bernaccia, so as long as Billy stays healthy and doesn't have any more kids, they should be good to go with the first attacker with Billy or Meter playing behind Billy. But what do you think about X Factor's chances here? You think they're going to be just as consistent, due for a win? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I do think they're due for a win. I think that adding Archie was massive for them. If he comes with like the same kind of mentality that he had maybe 2 years ago, where he was just so like, just like on a mission. I mean, he was unstoppable. And even this year in certain times, you'd see him just like over the top of the snake that no one else went over the top on. Just very confident, very just, controlling and just kind of having eyes everywhere and communicating. So, yeah, I mean, he's going to be a massive help, and they are already like an amazing team. So I would expect them to be in the hunt at every event.
Another big story, San Diego Dynasty. So, Dynasty loses Chris Shear to Tampa Bay Damage. Kevin Brettauer, their coach, to Tampa Bay Damage as well, too. Then Marcelo Margot. And then they pick up Kyle Berry and also pick up your boy, Joe Barrett. So, Zach, because some people are like, oh, again, fans, and I've heard the story a couple times throughout Dynasty's runs throughout the years. They're like, that's it, Dynasty's done, we're done for, after whatever change that happened, and lo and behold, they still find a way to Travis Lasso. Travis, this is why I'm going to ask you this question, or I wasn't going to ask you this question, but Zach, we probably all know what you're going to say, but I just want to get your thoughts on it. I mean, do you think Dynasty's done? Do you think it can still win tournaments? What do you think?
Well, shout out X Factor and Dynasty, Pro DNA teams. We always got their back. But yeah, I mean, Dynasty as an organization, they have some guys that have been around and have yet, I don't want to say have yet to show, but now they're back into the conversation of playing every single point. You have guys like Blake, who, we can elaborate on Blake, but I think everybody knows, like, if you keep him on the field and he gets in a groove, he's an extremely dangerous player. Dynasty was running 2 lines majority of last season, and I don't feel like, Blake was on the field 100% of the time. And like I said, I mean, with him getting more reps and, exploring the middles and, doing that number 2 cleanup, which, we've said that is so important. Like, that's definitely going to be interesting to see. And I still think that they're a dangerous team. You got another guy like Harrison, little dirt rocker. He's been waiting for his shot on Dynasty. You know what I mean? He played pretty well in Atlantic City, and then also had a really good World Cup. Harrison has a very unique style, whether it's in the Doritos or, whether it's in the snake, and, the layout calls for certain things. And I think Harrison applies that pretty well, regardless of what side he's on. But, Harrison will be another one that, should be on the field a lot more. And I wouldn't say, Dynasty's dead or anything like that. It's definitely going to be interesting to see, the dynamic of how they utilize players, and they still have Arturo. So he's a great player. He plays the snake very well. Definitely respect the dude a lot. So yeah, I don't think Dynasty's done. I don't think that, they're going to be winning every single event and just being the number 1 talking point on everybody's list. I mean, I feel very confident in our organization and definitely feel like we're going to be part of that conversation for sure. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, man.
Yeah, it was one of those situations where people be like, oh, Matty keeps talking about Dynasty. I'm like, bro, they're winning half the tournaments. What am I supposed to do? Not talk about the team winning half the tournaments for the past 4 years? I mean, it is what it is, dude. If you want me to tell another story, win the tournaments, I can talk about that or get up there. But Travis, let me ask you this question, though, because obviously, coaching the squad and organizing things, Dynasty picking up Mike Bianca from the Hurricanes. How much do you think that hurts the Hurricanes? I feel the coaches are incredibly fundamentally important. I mean, you can't go out there and play the game for the guys, but the structure of how the practice sessions are run, decisions on who's playing what position, who's playing in what position, and then also strategies and working with everyone and having to kind of be a psychologist at times. I mean, it's incredibly important to have a really solid coach. So what do you think about Dynasty, picking up Mike Bianca?
Yeah, I mean, that was a massive pickup. I mean, he would have been like on the short list for even me if I was going to like take a backseat to coaching. I would have been like, dude, Mike's on my list. He's like phenomenal coach, but I think more than anything, like a coach is sort of like you're wrangling some big personalities, and so keeping everybody in the right direction and the right mindset. That's more when you get to the top level teams, the top 10, 12 teams. It's all about. You don't have it as much in the lower level teams, even lower level pro teams, because they came up and made the jump together. So these dudes they're already meshed, right? They grew up together. They've been playing together every weekend. But when you get into these where you're bringing, this superstar from this area and this superstar from this area, you need somebody that can manage those personalities. And I mean, he's a really good, I think, a good leader. So just keeping those guys, even if it's like they can, create their own game plans. I mean, he's going to be great to just keep them in line and keep them motivated and keep them just on the right page. But your question about is Dynasty done? I mean, absolutely not. I mean, everyone's like worried about, they lost a few dudes and the dudes they lost are amazing, right? Marcelo and Shear. But at the same time, like no one realizes how deep they actually are. There was guys like he's talking about like Yarbers, and they had Danny from Level, and they had, Harrison, and they have guys, Arturo. They have guys that are sweet that weren't even getting the right reps. So, yeah, they're fine. I mean, not to mention the vets like Alex. Alex can still play paintball. He's sick. So if Alex plays again, you got Yosh, you got Ryan. I mean, you got some good players. They're not done at all. So.
Yeah, I talked to Alex yesterday actually, and I was like, hey, talk to Ryan, and he said you're going to be back into this. Well, I mean, he's been into it obviously for a long time, but with the changes, and he'd been kind of taken slightly a bit of a backseat as far as playing time, but he won an MVP in Chicago 2 years ago. Right. And I was like, but I hear that you kind of got a little bit of the fire back and want to be grinding. And he's like, oh yeah, dude, I want to get back after it. I want to want to be available and at my best level in case they need me. So yeah, I agree with you. They have a lot of options. Let me ask you this question. When you guys released Barrett, did you think that Dynasty was going to be the team that picked him up? Zach, what do you think?
I actually suggested it, because it wasn't like, I personally think Barrett's like, he's an awesome dude and he's a really good player. I saw immediate fit there because I knew that the Marcelo move, I don't know if I knew it had already, we all knew it was happening before it happened kind of thing, but like I suggested that move because he already has a good relationship with Harrison. He's a solid, closer type guy. There's no cheap deaths there. So I felt like that was an immediate thing. I suggested it to him. So yeah, I kind of saw that one coming. I mean, I'm not in their team chat and see their different, dynamics and who votes for who kind of thing. But it wasn't a huge shock to me. So.
What did you think, Zach?
Joe works hard. He works really hard. He first guy suited up, kind of last guy to take his stuff off. Shooting targets after practice. I like what Travis said. I think it's going to be a great fit with Harrison there. Maybe their chemistry sparks something that we haven't seen out of both of them on the field. I know that's super important for both those guys too. So am I surprised? No. Do I think that they're going to do well? I do. So
then Travis, was it just to make room for the new guys? Like okay, we got to let Joe go because we're picking up Trevor, or, what was the mindset behind, letting Joe go?
Yeah. I mean, it's more, as you're like molding your team and as you're like building what you think is the future of, how are you going to win an event next year, Matty, right? Like, so like, here's your chess pieces. He just, although a great player, maybe you have somebody else in that role, or maybe, maybe there's other guys on the team that aren't like jiving with him, or you know what I mean. So it's not always playing. It could just be like some personality conflicts. It could just be whatever. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into these decisions, and it's like sometimes you don't know. You're just kind of gambling.
Yeah, it's it's tough, right? Because you just get all the variables and talk to everyone, and you have your situation. You're like, well, I mean, I don't know if this is going to work out the best, but this is the way we're going to go. Hopefully it all works out. And if it doesn't, we'll reset whenever we feel like we need to do that. That's kind of how all this goes down. A couple more teams I want to talk to you about before I let you guys go. What do you think about Damage and Shock? Different situations here. Damage with the win again last year, slightly underperformed. Again, a lot of, decent amount of top teams didn't make a Sunday, but they were always pretty much in it. 6th, 7th, 1st, and then 9th. Picking up Sheer, picking up SK. Maybe Trav will start with you though, because you've, again, as we're talking about, you're trying to make these best decisions. I know Joey. I'm not going to ask you the question, how good do you think they're going to be? I mean, Damage is going to be good. They've continued to be good. I think they're getting objectively better. But they are having, I think the big question is, Kevin Brethauer is coming in with a little bit more of a hands-on approach than, and then they're going to have Joey too. So they got both of them. I think they're going to be better next year, but it's just how much better, considering how some of these other top teams are loading up or, trying to rebuild. And I just think this is why it's kind of, again, a little bit of a new era here in 2025. And because these stories are just different than the stories we've been telling with some of these teams. What do you think, Travis?
Yeah, I think they're going to be sweet. Of course, they lost Rainey, but you also added, Chris Shear to an attack. You added CJ Cantor, who I think is pretty phenomenal. They got Carter as a backup snake player for Keith.
Yeah.
So I do think that they have added not only depth but also some interesting new things, right? Like, so maybe you don't need Boussiere if you have Shear, kind of thing. Like, you can move Chad into the middle type of thing to kind of cover that Rainy zone, or maybe you have CJ kind of playing on the edge in those dead spots and then moving up the middle to kind of cover the Rainy gaps. But I think they're going to be sweet. So I'm not worried about them. And obviously, like, adding in Skinny, he's been successful with them in the past when they were, I don't remember what year that was. I think they had J-Rab and Baines, and I think Skinny was the coach back then. That was a really, really powerful team. So they'll be good.
And then Zach, obviously a team you're pretty familiar with because you used to play for this squad. We discussed how you came up in this camp, Chicago Aftershock. I mean, it's got to kind of, I know they're your rivals right now, but it's kind of got to be pretty cool for you to see Aftershock back and with an owner that wants to be at the top again. Yeah, what do you think, man? I mean, and some of the moves they made in the offseason, how they did last year. What do you think?
Shock is always going to have a soft spot with me. I'm super hyped on, the way that LJ is playing. I think he's a great player. I think it's good that, he's in the Doritos, and he's a hard target to hit, man. He's super small. He's really fast. They added Connor Kelly, I believe. Yeah. I think Connor still has a lot to find as far as his groove. He played great with Heat. I think he started to find a groove there, but just finding that consistency that he can apply. And he played majority of the snake side. Yeah. So I think with, Todd's coaching, both Todd Martinez and Adamson, I think with their leadership, Connor is going to get a lot better. And then, their current guys that they have that haven't left, those guys are going to, continue to flourish, and it's going to be interesting. I mean, I'm not familiar with who they practice. I really never saw them last year, so can't really speak on, the organization on, how they prepare before events. That's still a little blurry for me. And then also they picked up a couple of the Bears guys that I'm pretty familiar with and homies with. Those guys are great additions regardless of where they go, Depth is definitely something that they have. They have to have minimally 10, right? It's got to be.
Yeah, they're pretty
there.
deep. Well, they lost Nick Sloviak and Al Fernandez to I don't know who Nick's going to play with yet. I don't think that's been released unless you guys saw something. But then Al Fernandez is going to retire. Also with Alex Rodriguez and his music career, maybe an event he might have to miss, but he seems pretty committed. And then Thomas Kim is a pilot, and he's just, past couple years got into that profession. So he's also might have to potentially miss an event here or there. So I think that they picked up the Bears guys as a bit of depth, losing some veterans with the sponsorship changes that they had. So that's why Nick Sloviak had to step away. And then Al has been doing this forever. So that does give him more depth and more depth on the attack. Nick Criscone, who they picked up, he's a little bit more of that 2-3 position, but with the Altamores, definitely more attackers. So yeah, I think it gives them some depth, and man, they're hungry for it. They definitely do train against top teams, Zach. So I don't think they're going to be slacking in that situation, down to travel in different places. But yeah, just a couple more teams, because, we do got, again, guys, will be having tons of shows coming at you here before the start of the 2025 season, picking all these, leading lights in the sports brains on these things. But it's just, man, it's like each one of these teams just has such a fascinating story. Let me ask you this, the last couple questions, the last couple squads. AC Diesel, I mean, obviously losing Mouse to Impact, Alex Goldman decides to go kind of reunite with the OG Aftermath dudes. And that seems about it. I haven't really heard any rumblings of some new, I know there was some talk of potentially this guy or that guy, but haven't pulled the trigger on anything. So it seems like it's going to be basically the same squad minus Alex Goldman. Trav, what do you got for me? Same?
Yeah, I mean,
not as good.
I think
better?
that's another. Well, okay, I guess you could say anytime you're going to pull Mouse off a team, they should be worse because Mouse is so dynamic. But
yeah.
But honestly, they have guys like Clinton, BJ, and Spica, and that could play those same roles. And then maybe you just set your team a little different. Like, not everyone has a Mouse. So my opinion, they could still be a great team. They could still go deep in Sunday, and one guy does not define a team. So they can still do it. They keep the core together. That's, in my opinion, that's the biggest thing, is keeping your core together. So
yeah, shout out to
to
Lackey. I believe he went there as well.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, Lackey's.
That's true.
Yeah, he's good.
Lackey.
Yeah, Lackey's really good. I think. Go ahead, Matty. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, Lackey coming off of Tampa Bay Damage, and didn't get. I mean, definitely got a decent amount of playing time with them throughout the past couple seasons. But when you're playing behind Keith Brown, kind of tough. But Lackey's a veteran, really good dude too, man. Really, really good dude. But it's just one of those things, man. It always comes down to execution. I mean, that's the big. We could sit here and talk for hours as well as we will on the lead up to the season, because it's fun to talk about paintball. But I mean, it really just kind of comes down to who's going to execute, like who actually gets out there and performs well. You can have all the promise and experience in the world, but if you're not winning more than half the points, then you're probably not going to win any paintball tournaments. And so that's kind of the situation, as we've seen with AC Diesel, right? Is that they just, even with their badass roster and picking up some big names and pain dudes, just didn't get a ton of consistent execution for the past couple seasons. They finally got it at World Cup, and then mentally fell apart in that game against PB Fit, which, as we watched the clip earlier in the show, kind of started there with the bonus ball fest that began at the end of your guys' match.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Zach. I guess the last couple questions is that we haven't talked about any of the up and coming squads. Zach, are there any up and coming teams that are on your radar right now that you think are going to do? Maybe the new pro teams. How do you think they're going to do? And then maybe teams like Uprising. We started to see them perform a lot better towards the end of the season. Teams down kind of in the the bottom tier of the 20 pro teams that we have.
I think Uprising would be at the top of my list. Nate went over there from our team, and immediately, they started to see production. I think the biggest aspect with their game is that they got the communication down. They were playing, I believe it was Damage in Chicago. And, a lot of the times with that team, they have the ball within a point and they're about to win it. And then some guy got, too jiggy and went down the field and died stupid. And then, the other team went and cleaned up the point, and that was it. And that was, I feel like, a story with them for a little bit of time. But like I said, in that Chicago match against Damage, they were locked. They recognized Damage's style, and they were playing to that, and hanging right there with them the entire time. I don't know if that's a coaching aspect. I don't know if the guys have, sat down and really narrowed down what they need to do to win, but I feel like they found another gear that they can definitely capitalize on this year. And Uprising would definitely be one of the teams on my list to watch. I don't take those guys lightly at all.
What do you think, Travis?
Yeah, I would say I didn't get it. I watched Leverage a little bit because, like the Dallas event, maybe they canceled, our pro bracket. So me and Callie and Zach, we all kind of made our way over to the semi-pro field because we still were at the event. We want to watch paintball. So I was able to watch some of the semi-pro teams that have moved up, Sea Dogs and Leverage, and I just don't know them well enough besides just watching one event to know how they're going to fare in the pro division. But obviously, if they're hanging in semi-pro at the top there, I mean, they should be able to kind of come in and compete. Should be okay. Should be competitive. But again, I have to agree with Zach that I do think that Uprising is, they're right there. They're ready to turn that corner. And I think they have a team meeting and they're like, look, no cheap deaths, let's just go out there, be survivors, communicate, and just finish the point together. And, stuff happens throughout the point. You just be dynamic off of that. That's why I didn't get to mention Dart earlier. So I'm going to send Dart up there to get Nate off the field because they like to hunt each other out there.
Yeah, I think Ryan Rodarte was a great pickup from you guys. He kind of called a shot too, which I was talking about on the, our live broadcast, because I saw him, was playing with Heat for that one event and then goes over to you guys. It's great to see him come back. And he was just looking at the middle and he's like, Matty, I've got this middle dialed and I'm going to be tearing people's heads off in here. And sure enough, he was. Yeah. And it was very impressive. And he just immediately made his presence felt and was a core member of the team, kind of, picked up like he had never left off and spent any time away from the game, which doesn't always happen. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time for guys to kind of work their way in. Yeah. He didn't. And he's a huge asset to your guys' squad.
Yeah. So he, I don't know if you know this, but we still play the ICPL, the woods ball, the 10-man, all that cover ball stuff. And although he had to take time off for his family and his job and stuff like that to go, he couldn't play the same dedication that NXL needs because you need all these weekends of practice and all that. So he would still play ICPL with us. That's why he kind of, I think, was still sharp and his comms were still on because he's still used to playing at that high level. Even though it's 10-man, it's just, it's still competitive paintball. It's just a little different. And then, obviously, I was always dude, when you're ready to come back, you're so good. Let's come back. And then he did the Heat thing. He called me, was like, I got to do the Heat thing. It's a good opportunity. I said, go for it. And then, when that didn't work, I was like, come on over, dude. We're ready.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I definitely know that you guys, because we've, done the Iron City Classics and played some 10-mans. And I mean, if you guys have just been watching the X-Ball format, Major League Paintball, Infamous absolutely crushes it in 10-man and has for years. You guys slaughter people over there. You got tons of wins, second places, third place finishes. I mean, I even think, didn't they change the rules for you guys a couple seasons ago? Because you guys won all the tournaments or something, and they were like, yeah, we can't just have Infamous winning every single one of these tournaments. We gotta change the qualifications on this in this situation.
Yeah, they changed the rules on us. And then they made a Thomas Taylor rule, so Thomas couldn't play with us. But yeah, it was it was fun. I mean, I use that as obviously that's kind of where I grew up in that 10-man era. So I use that as sort of a fun weekend. Of course, it's competitive. Of course, you're trying to win and not slack off too much. But it's a good team building, teach the guys how to win type of an atmosphere. So it's great. So. Shout out ICPL.
Yeah. Are you guys still planning on playing those moving forward and doing the Pro DNA Open? Is that still on the board for you guys?
Yeah. So the plan is right now we go in a few weeks to the ICPL in Tampa. And I know it's 2025, but that's the final one of 2024. It's kind of some weird goofy thing, but so it's kind of like the college football championships, right? Like they're finishing in 2025. But yeah, so this year, I don't have all the good details, but last I heard from Tom was there's going to be 3, besides the ones that they host at the NXLs themselves, there's going to be 3 standalone ones. And I'm not sure who they are, but I think Pro DNA Open is one of them. So a little self-promotion there. We'll be hosting one. We'll announce the dates and the times probably in the next week or 2.
Nice. The last thing I want to ask you before I let you guys go is that, to me, I talk about you guys quite a bit on these shows because, again, it's a legendary team and you guys have this fun team to watch. It's an aggressive team, and I was hoping you guys would do better last year. I think you guys have a decent chance this season, but there's a ton of personality and charisma on the guys in Infamous. So if you go to a practice and you're kind of, bullshit with the dudes, it's a bunch of personality. It's always had a team full of personality. So you're one of those teams that I'm like, can someone with a camera please follow this team around? Because, we can only do so much over here with what we got going on. So can somebody make that happen, please? There needs to be some sort of Infamous story told. But I've been hearing you guys have picked up DQ, Danny Quinn, to kind of bring on to help you guys with that side of things. I think if that's true, that's huge. Because you guys have a really cool story with the history and the roster you guys got, the personalities on the team, the way you play the game. I think it's kind of a sweet spot. So what's going on with that?
Yeah, actually, he was just here. He was just off camera a second ago, but I think he went to pick up his girl from the airport. Anyhow, he's on board now with the team. So not only will he be at events, but he'll be at practices and this type of stuff. And he's here at the office at Infamous headquarters, so he gets some of the behind the scenes looks at stuff. But I know like him and Zach kind of go way back. Obviously, we've seen him from back in the Dirter days, right? Like he's done so much cool stuff. But he's one of the last few like super artistic, almost like videographer style. He's not just doing like the fast food stuff. He can really like put together some content. So it's cool to have a guy like that. His talent is like immense. So we're stoked.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's huge for you guys because it's, me, I'm a sucker for a story and I hate untold stories. So I'm glad that somebody's going to be telling yours. So that's awesome for this upcoming season and hopefully moving forward. So I think that's about it. You guys got anything you want to talk about before we sign off? Anything you guys got going on you want to let people know about, Zach?
Not off the top of my head right now. I think just overall to talk about the Infamous brand, with putting DQ on and everything, we're definitely making a push when it comes to, really making Infamous a staple in the industry with a brand. Travis did an insane job of building this monster of a brand that was just a t-shirt company not that long ago. You know what I mean? And with expanding and growing so fast, this year we're really going to start to dial in on, telling the Infamous story and getting more marketing out there that, you see from other companies because they have 25 employees running that department. You know what I mean? We have a small knit family that makes the Infamous gears turn, led by Trav. But yeah, there's a lot of cool things. There's a lot of cool new products coming out at Infamous, and 2025 is going to be a year.
Travis, any final thoughts?
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously, we're excited about all the changes and everything going forward. In terms of like Infamous and Pro DNA, we kind of went through all that like it's not just Infamous, the pro team. It's kind of like now we have this whole like brand that sort of sponsors other teams. You can reach out to guys like Zach or Eddie or whoever and talk about, how do we get involved with being a part or getting sponsorship or whatever. So yeah, man, it's exciting. I think this will be a fun season. I think that this is probably the first year in a lot of years where, the pro level is very even, right? You've seen the ML Kings beat, Impact or, someone where in the past that would have never happened. So I think we're going to see a lot of stuff like that again, and it's going to be exciting. I mean, obviously, like Fit winning Cup. I mean, that's a huge story there. So We're pumped, dude. We're ready to go.
Well, I really appreciate you guys sitting in and having this discussion with me. Again, big fan, love watching you guys play the game, and wish you the very best in 2025. I'll have to touch base again soon. Thank you guys out there in the paintball world for tuning in, listen to this little bit of the infamous story, and we will keep you guys updated as we move into 2025 with more of these in-depth interviews discussing the ins and outs of the tip of the spear in this game that we love so much, professional paintball. I'm Matty Marshall. Thank you guys, infamous Zach Patient, Travis Lemanski, two of my favorites. I'll see you guys next time.